The year was 2009, and the mountains of Afghanistan had a way of swallowing people whole, not just their bodies, their voices, their names, their stories. The valleys between the peaks were deep and cold, and the wind that moved through them carried the smell of dust and something older, something that had no name in any language. In these mountains, a small team of Navy SEALs had been operating for 11 days without rest, moving at night and hiding during the day, speaking only in whispers. Maya Reyes arrived by helicopter at 0300 hours, 26 years old, focused, and carrying a custom M110 sniper rifle she had personally zeroed 3 times. The team's senior chief, Garza, met her presence with a silence that said more than words ever could. She wasn't there to be welcomed, she was there to do a job. It was a reconnaissance mission. A logistics commander had been tracked to a compound surrounded by dry, cracked soil. Satellite imagery showed purposeful movement inside. But plans in Afghanistan have a short shelf life. The target was moving, and he was taking a physical list. The names of 6 local informants. 6 lives were on the line. The mission changed. It was no longer enough to watch. Garza laid out the options under a red lens flashlight that cast everything in the color of dried blood. While the team planned for 4 guards, Maya had been watching through her scope for 6 hours. She saw something no one else had counted. The glint of glass. 7 snipers spread across the ridgelines in a professional, overlapping pattern. Someone had planned this. Someone was waiting for them. She waited until Garza was done before she spoke 4 words, quietly, without drama. There are 7 snipers. The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. 7 snipers, professionally positioned, likely former military. The weight of what it meant settled over the group like something physical. Too many snipers, Garza said. Maya was already back behind her rifle. She noted the wind, calculated the distance, and planned the sequence. She had done this before, under worse conditions. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. She simply watched and calculated, and waited for the moment when the darkness would be exactly right. She did not move. The suppressed shot made a sound like a book dropped flat on a hard floor, a short, sharp thump. Maya did not wait to confirm the hit visually. She already knew. She was already moving. In the wide, indifferent air of the valley, she was a shadow in motion. The bolt cycled. The empty casing landed silently. She shifted the rifle 17 degrees to the right. She found P6 on a ridgeline. He had heard nothing. That gap, the space between a sound and a mind's decision, was the smallest unit of time Maya worked in. She had learned to live inside that gap. Her breathing was the same as before, slow and deliberate, timed to the rhythm of her body. She fired. P6 went still. 2 down, 5 remaining. Elapsed time, 11 seconds. She moved to P1, the guard near the main gate. He was the trickiest, partially obscured by the angle of the wall. She had already calculated the adjustment, a few centimeters higher than center mass, accounting for the brick edge that would stop anything aimed at his torso. She settled the crosshairs on his shoulder, adjusted upward, and fired. He dropped. The thermal signature was gone. That was what mattered. 3 down, 4 remaining. This was where things could unravel. 3 shots in 30 seconds produce a physical reality that can be felt. A disturbance in the atmosphere, a pattern of absence where 3 men had been present moments ago. If they sensed it, the situation would change rapidly. But P4 was isolated. An outbuilding blocked his sightline. He was watching the road, unaware that the world around him was quietly being rearranged. She fired, 710 meters. In the brutal arithmetic of her profession, it was an easy shot. 51 seconds elapsed. P2 and P5 were more difficult, not because of distance, but because of proximity. 40 meters apart. Their sightlines overlapped significantly. If one glanced toward the other at the wrong moment, the mission would end in a radio call. She needed to take them in rapid succession. She had rehearsed this, detailed internal repetition until the sequence felt like memory rather than anticipation. Timing was everything. She found P2, fired without pausing, cycled the bolt, swung 12 degrees left, found P5 as he began to turn his head, and fired again. Both shots fell within 4 seconds of each other. 6 down, 1 remaining. The hardest shot was yet to come. P7 was 912 meters away, the overview of the entire valley. He had not let the cold and the quiet make him careless. She did not rush. Rushing at this distance was the same as missing. She took her time,
finding the rhythm of his movements through the glass. She waited for the moment of stillness. When it came, she exhaled and fired. The bullet traveled for just over a second. It crossed 2 ridgelines and arrived. All 7 snipers were down. The valley below remained as quiet as it had been before she started. 7 down, all confirmed. The night still had a long way to go. The compound was waiting. The list was inside.
Moving toward the compound in the dark was a different kind of tension than lying still behind a rifle. When Maya was behind the scope, everything was reduced to her breathing and the glass and the calculations that moved through her mind like water. There was a stillness to it that felt like control. Moving was the opposite. It was exposure, dependence, the inability to see everything. The team descended the ridgeline in single file. Garza at the front, Maya third, Breck behind her, moving as they were drilled to move. Slow, deliberate, each footstep placed with intention. Weapons up, eyes scanning. It was no longer a decision, but a reflex. The moon was behind a layer of cloud. The darkness was deep and useful. They reached the base of the slope without incident. The compound was 300 meters ahead. Through her night vision device, Maya could see the guards on the main wall. Routine. Bored. Garza held up a fist and the team stopped. He made a gesture. Watch and hold. He wanted Maya to confirm the positions. She swept the perimeter. 2 on the main wall. 1 near the eastern gate. 1 on the rooftop, possibly asleep. 4. All of them in the same positions as they had been for the past 3 days. She gave Garza the signal. He nodded. The plan for entry centered on the eastern gate, the weakest point, patched with newer brick that would not hold. They would not need a breach. The locking mechanism was a simple iron bar, simple solutions to simple problems. The SEALs had a saying, the most complicated operation was the one with the most ways to fail. Breck carried the tool. Garza left Thomas and Walsh at the base of the wall. He took Maya, Breck, Holt, and Solis through the gate. The bar lifted cleanly. Breck had oiled the hinges the night before, an unauthorized piece of initiative. Silence. They were inside. A central courtyard, 2 buildings, a generator shed. Everything else was dark. The guard on the rooftop was no longer drooping. He was awake now, and awake was more dangerous than asleep. The target was Hassan Karimi. The list was with him. Both needed to be secured before the alarm was raised. Maya knew that the part that could not be planned for was the part that always came, the moment a variable appeared. She was thinking about this as they crossed the courtyard, staying in the shadow, and then the variable appeared. A side door that had not opened in 3 days. A figure stepped through it carrying a tray. A boy, young, maybe a teenager. He stood in the open doorway, holding the tray, and looked across the courtyard directly at Maya. For a moment, neither of them moved. The boy was perhaps 15, a T-boy caught in the low light of a courtyard where violence was being planned. His eyes were wide, staring directly at Maya, who stood 12 meters away with a rifle on her back and a face covered in shadow. She reached him before he found his voice, steadying the tray with a gloved hand. A wordless communication. "I see you." She guided him to a kitchen, telling him to stay quiet and stay safe. She did not promise what she could not deliver. 3, 2, 1. They moved through the door fast. The room was clear. 2 men were neutralized in seconds. Hassan Karimi. She found the list. 6 names of people who didn't know how close to the edge they were standing. "Time to move," Garza said. 10 minutes until compromise. The helicopter was 22 minutes out. The math was not comfortable. Getting Karimi out of the building was a problem that looked straightforward on paper, but felt completely different when the man himself was resistant. He was too experienced to waste energy on physical struggle he could not win. He dragged his feet in the subtle way of someone who had decided that slowing things down was the only form of defiance available to him. And in a situation where every minute had a specific value, subtle resistance had a cost. Garza handled it with blunt efficiency. He spoke directly into Karimi's ear in Arabic. 2 sentences. Whatever they were, they caused Karimi to start moving at an acceptable pace. Garza never said what the words were. They moved through the courtyard in a tight formation, Karimi between Holt and Solis, Breck at the rear watching the walls. The silence of the night was heavy, and the shadows were their only cover. Maya was at the front, back to being the eyes in the dark. She was aware of a feeling she had no good name for, a heightened sensitivity, every nerve slightly more awake than usual. The world arriving at her with more detail and speed. The problem arrived 40 seconds later. It was not a patrol or a radio check. It was simpler and harder to predict. Somewhere in the compound behind them, a mobile phone began to ring, and then stopped, and then began to ring again. A voice, high and young, tight with barely controlled panic, called out from somewhere inside the walls. The T-boy had found a phone. Whatever was being said had been enough to start something. Harsh white lights flooded the compound, activated by someone who knew exactly where the switch was. The courtyard they had just crossed was suddenly lit like a stage. "Go," Garza said. Not loud, just clear. The extraction point was 1.4 kilometers to the north, Lima 7. They had walked it out 3 nights earlier, measuring for loose rock. Getting to it in 18 minutes while moving a prisoner was the part that required everything. Maya ran point, moving fast and low, her rifle sweeping ahead while the team moved in a staggered column behind her. The ground was uneven and treacherous, crossed by dry irrigation channels and scattered with loose stone. Behind them, the compound was becoming loud. Voices, sharp and urgent. A door slamming. And then the sound of an engine, the pickup they had seen in the imagery and factored into the planning as a potential pursuit vehicle. "Truck," Breck said quietly. "I hear it," Garza replied. Solis and Walsh dropped back to the last positions in the column without breaking stride, turning so that they were moving at a slow backward jog. The headlights of the pickup came on, visible as a bloom of yellow light over the wall, and then the sound of it moving, the engine rising. It would take less than a minute for them to begin the pursuit across the open ground. Maya did the math. 900 meters to Lima 7. Truck moving at 40 kilometers per hour, helicopter still 11 minutes out. It was close. The drainage channels would force the vehicle to slow, but time was running out. "Keep moving," she said. "I'll handle the truck." She did not slow down. She left the column, moving away toward the ridge, choosing to be the one who balanced the scales in a world where every minute has a value. Under the veil of a moonless night, the line between hunter and hunted dissolves into the grit of the terrain. The mission was simple, but the execution was everything. Reyes moved with calculated precision, angling toward a natural berm, a meter-high scar in the earth that offered sanctuary. It was cover, and cover was survival. 80 meters away, a Toyota Hilux tore through the silence, its headlights sweeping the void like twin scythes. 3 men in the bed, 2 in the cab, closing fast. In the bed of that truck, a figure rose with an RPG. The calculation shifted instantly. A sniper's world isn't measured in yards, but in heartbeats and hard choices. She didn't aim for the engine this time. She aimed for the threat. 1 round, 1 heartbeat. The gunner fell and the threat was neutralized. The truck bucked into a drainage channel, the momentum carrying it sideways. Before it dropped back down with a crash. The engine stalled. The pursuit was over. But the valley has a long memory. As the team sprinted toward Lima 7, the air cracked with the sound of suppressive fire. Not aimed, but heavy. It was an atmospheric pressure designed to break their stride, to force them to ground. The rounds went wide, but the message was clear. Walsh took a grazing hit, a momentary stumble in a high-stakes race against an unforgiving clock. "Grazing, keep moving, I'm good," he said. 200 meters, 150, the distance shrinking as the adrenaline takes hold, and the sound of the pursuit fades behind them. Then came the rhythmic thud of rotors, a vibration you feel in your sternum long before you see the machine. The pilot was coming in dark. The helicopter banked over the ridgeline, a dark shape against a darker sky, descending with lethal grace onto the flat ground of Lima 7. They reached it, Karimi, Walsh, Thomas, one by one disappearing into the belly of the machine. No ceremony, just survival. Garza held the door, the final gatekeeper of their survival, waiting for Reyes. She stayed outside for one last beat, a final round to discourage the shadows closing in. As the skids left the dirt, the valley fell away, leaving only the adrenaline and the mechanical hum of the escape. In this theater of conflict, survival isn't a ceremony, it's a series of managed risks. Every choice is a calculation. Every round fired is a weight on the scale of human consequence. We tell ourselves stories of heroism to mask the cold reality of tactical necessity. When the rotors fade, only the silence remains. Reyes didn't want a medal. She wanted the team back, and in the dark of that valley, that was enough. The helicopter banked hard as it climbed, and the valley fell away. Below, the lights of the compound were a cluster of white and yellow against the dark ground. Maya sat with her back against the aircraft's wall, her rifle across her knees. She closed her eyes for 30 seconds before the noise brought her back. Walsh was across from her, his face pale but steady. The wound was real, but he was breathing normally. They had all trained for this. Karimi sat against the far wall, staring at the floor. He looked less like a logistics commander and more like a frightened man beginning to understand his fate. She reached into her jacket and took out a folded piece of paper. 6 names in the harsh red light. She didn't recognize them. She didn't need to. They were 6 names still unknown to the people who would have used that list. That was the only thing that mattered in this moment. Then the exhaustion came. Not from the body, but from the mind. It rose slowly, like cold water. Legs, shoulders, then behind the eyes. Garza moved from the front and sat next to her. The usual hardness was gone from his face, replaced by a look of profound recognition. A long minute passed, filled with the roar of the rotors and the rush of cold air. Finally, Garza spoke the words they both knew were true. "You never told me you were that good," he said. Maya thought about it. "You didn't ask," she replied, her voice steady. "I've worked with 40 snipers," Garza said. "But 7 positions, different distances, in the dark, 53 seconds. I've never seen anything like it." Maya didn't respond. Compliments always felt like a coat that didn't quite fit. She acknowledged them, but she didn't wear them. "The T-boy," she said. "He was just there. When they look for answers, make sure he isn't caught in the downstream of this." Garza agreed. He saw the clarity in her eyes, not peace, but a kind of recognition that exists only in the most extreme circumstances. She thought about the shot at 912 meters, the near simultaneous fire, the stillness of the choice before it became action. Outside, the mountains moved past, enormous and indifferent. The lights of the forward operating base appeared as a low orange glow against the black. She had entered the mission as an attachment. She was leaving as something else, not belonging exactly, but recognition between those who have seen the truth. The aircraft began its descent toward the base. The lights grew brighter, and she could see the figures moving on the ground, waiting for them. She thought of the 6 names. 6 people who would live their lives tomorrow and for years beyond, without ever knowing the shadow they escaped. She was fine with that. She hadn't done it for them to know. She did it because the alternative was something she refused to accept. The wheels touched down. The mission was complete. Maya walked away into the darkness of the base. The debriefing lasted 4 hours. It was held in a prefabricated room in the intelligence section of the forward operating base, a low-ceilinged space where the fluorescent lighting hummed with an irritating frequency. 4 people sat behind the table: a Navy intelligence officer, a CIA case officer named Carl with a flat, unreadable affect, and 2 others whose institutional affiliations remained unspecified. Maya sat across from them and answered with precision. When they asked about the 7 sniper positions, she described her process, her calculations, and the timing of each shot. When Carl asked about the truck, she described the threat assessment, the RPG, the distance, the drainage channel that would act as a natural brake. She had calculated how to disable it without an explosion. Carl looked at her for a long moment. "You estimated that in the field," he said, "while running." "Yes," she replied. He wrote something on his pad that she could not read. Then there was the list, the 6 names. She confirmed its recovery from the northern building. Carl noted she had read them. She confirmed she had, but added she wasn't in the habit of memorizing them. The last portion dealt with the sniper total. Intelligence had identified 2, maybe 3 security assets. Maya had neutralized 7. They wanted to understand the discrepancy. She described the glint of glass and the deliberate overlap of fire. It suggested someone knew exactly how a team would approach. It suggested prior knowledge of the mission. Carl looked at her sharply. When it ended, she walked into the gray pre-dawn light. The wind came down from the mountains, cold and clean. The sky above the ridgelines was a deep, textured blue. Garza was waiting with hot, terrible coffee. They stood together without speaking as the base around them came awake. Vehicles moving, generators humming, the distant sound of a returning medevac. Walsh was in the medical facility, already arguing with medics to avoid restricted duty. He didn't want to miss next week's operation, details of which were above Maya's access level. "What happens to the list?" she asked. Garza shrugged. "The names get processed. Relocation, uprooted lives, identities altered. A disruption that was better than the alternative, but still heavy." Maya operated in the physical world, distances and ballistics, and the precise management of risk. What happened to people in rooms afterward was a world she had no desire to examine closely. "Carl is going to want to talk to you again," Garza warned. "He runs a program, recruitment adjacent. He wrote a lot of things down during your debrief." She looked at the mountains. The sky was lightening, the first suggestion of the sun already changing the character of the darkness. "I'll hear what he has to say," she said. Garza drank his coffee. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. In this world, some things were better left in the silence between the words. The debriefing lasted 4 hours, held in a prefabricated room in the intelligence section. The air hummed with a frequency that felt like a needle. Walls were plastered with maps and photographs, data produced by analysts in great quantities, viewed with respect and skepticism by the field. 4 people sat behind the table: a Navy intelligence officer, a CIA case officer named Carl, and 2 others whose shadows remained unnamed. Maya sat across from them. She spoke with a precision that was neither arrogant nor humble. It was simply the truth of the field. They asked about the 7 sniper positions. She described the calculations, the order of engagement, and the timing of every shot. She referred to her notes, waterproof, detailed, and exact. To her, the mission was a series of solved equations on a page. Then came the truck. An RPG in the bed, a split-second threat assessment made in the moment, calculating the angle and the drainage channel. She estimated the probability of disabling it without a blast. Noise and light would have complicated the extraction. She chose the harder path. "You estimated that in the field," Carl remarked, "while running." Her answer was as flat as the terrain. "Yes." Then there was the list. 6 names recovered from a northern building, lying next to a laptop. Handwritten, scanned, acted upon. The names were already being analyzed in rooms Maya would never see, a shadow war sparked by a single piece of paper. "You read the names," Carl said. Maya confirmed it, but she didn't memorize them. She wasn't in the habit of carrying that kind of weight. Then, the discrepancy. Intelligence predicted 3 snipers. Maya neutralized 7. The math of the mission didn't add up. The pattern was too perfect. It suggested a clear understanding of coalition assault methodology. It suggested prior knowledge. The debriefing ended. She walked into the cold mountain air. The sky was a textured blue, the stars fading as the day took hold. Garza was waiting. He handed her a cup of terrible coffee, hot and necessary. They stood in the silence of the base, coming awake. What happens to the list? Relocation. Lives uprooted. The particular exhaustion of people who must now recalibrate their double existences. And Karimi? He'll talk. They always do. The question is how much of his truth will still be current by the time he breaks. "Carl wants to talk to you again," Garza warned. "He runs a program. He wrote a lot of things down during your debrief." Maya looked at the mountains. "I'll hear what he has to say," she said. And the mission continued.
3 months after the Kunar province operation, a classified report circulated. It spoke of 7 shots in 53 seconds. 7 hostile positions neutralized with 0 detection. But for Maya, the shooter, the statistics weren't what mattered. She thought about the boy with the tea tray and the 6 names on her list. They were alive. That was the number that counted. When Carl offered her a different kind of work, longer-term, shadow work, she took it. She accepted the boundaries of her new life. She carries the stillness of the valley before the shots, the calculation of what was preserved by the things that were not. Somewhere, a notebook contains 7 check marks. It will never be declassified, but those 6 people are still alive. That, in the end, is the whole story.